Hello, everyone, and welcome to the MIT Sloan CIO Digital Learning Series. So we've been doing monthly webinars since June, and we're going to continue doing monthly webinars through October. This is episode number 3. Our overall theme for the whole digital learning series is leading a post-pandemic enterprise. So what's in store for today? Well, we have a Fireside Chat, which is going to focus on what will the post-pandemic workplace be like, and that will be followed by a panel discussion on driving customer experience through technology. Please remember that you can participate while we're having our Fireside Chat and panel. Use the Q&A at the bottom of the screen to post your questions. So without further ado, let's get into the Fireside Chat, and let me introduce our moderator, Irving Wladawsky-Berger. So Irving is a visiting lecturer in MIT's Sloan School of Management. He is also a fellow at the Initiative on the Digital Economy. He's an adjunct professor at the Imperial College Business School, and he also enjoyed 37 years at IBM focused on innovation and technology. Irving, I tip my hat to you because I too spent a few years at IBM. He writes a great blog. If you haven't found it, you should go look at it. It's really good. And also he writes articles for the Wall Street Journal, and he received his MS and PhD in physics from the University of Chicago. So please join me in welcoming Irving Wladawsky-Berger. Hi, Irving.
Hello, Alan, and thank you for that very kind introduction. And it's a pleasure to be here moderating our Fireside Chat on what will the post-pandemic workplace be like. And the description of the Fireside Chat in the CIO Symposium website reminds us that existing digital infrastructures have made it possible to respond to COVID-19 by transitioning 3/4 of office workers to remote workers. Let me make 2 points before introducing our participants. One is that there are many people that cannot work from home. So this is very, very important, but the only reason people like us are able to work from home is because there are so many other people that are continuing to work from their places. The second, Alan, is that when we first planned this Fireside Chat 2 months ago, I thought, gee, what if the pandemic is so much under control that this sounds like a boring subject nobody cares about? Well, not only is this as important or even more important than it was 2 months ago, but 2 of us, Ish and I, were not sure we could participate because as a result of the big storm Isaias that came through Connecticut, our digital infrastructures and power were wiped out. So this is a very, very timely subject. And with that, let me bring up.
Well, Irving, I just want to say, I think the audience will really appreciate the fact that you did get your power back and you are here to moderate so that we didn't have to go to our plan B, and I won't even talk about what that was. I will, however, just one more reminder to the audience to please, if you have questions, use Q&A at the bottom of your screen. And with that, Irving, I'm going to bid adieu, and I am looking forward to your Fireside Chat. Thanks so much.
So with that, let's bring the members of our Fireside Chat. Mehdi Daoudi, who is the CEO and co-founder of Catchpoint Systems, Anish Sundaran, who is Executive VP, Chief Digital and Technology Officer of JetBlue, and I must add, our 2019 MIT CIO of the Year. Welcome, Ish. Welcome, Mehdi. Ish, I'm very happy that you finally got your own power and internet and like me are able to participate. And let me ask each of you to give a brief introduction of your role within the company, starting with Mehdi, please.
Irving, thank you so much for having us. Obviously, this is an immense pleasure. So my name is Mehdi. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Catchpoint. And Catchpoint is in the digital experience management and monitoring business. And so we help companies deliver amazing customer experiences. And now, because of the pandemic and work from home, how can we help companies deliver first-class experiences to all their employees worldwide?
Ish, please.
Irvin, first of all, good morning and good day, everyone across the globe. It's a pleasure and honor to be here. My name is Ish Sundaram. I take a lot of pride in saying I'm one of the 23,000 JetBlue crew members. Proud part of being the family of our team, and I manage JetBlue's digital technology, data science, and our venture capital. I've been with JetBlue for about 9 years now, and thank you for having us here.
Very good. And Ish, let me start with you on the next question, because I think everybody sort of knows part of the answer. What's the impact of the pandemic been in your company, JetBlue? So tell us a little bit about the impact.
Irvin, first of all, I'm hoping everyone's safe and healthy across the globe. One of the most, serious impact JetBlue has had so far is we've lost 8 precious human lives in JetBlue. That hasn't been very easy for us. Our thoughts and prayers for all the families of our crew members, who've passed away or being impacted, and millions of people affected across the globe. So it's been quite devastating. As we probably saw this impact in our industry much before many other industries saw this back early January timelines, when we started seeing traffic from Europe and Asia starting to slow down. And I would have never imagined, in our industry where the demand came down to a near zero at one point in May, and the world was shut down, and pretty much there wasn't any connectivity across the globe. Over the past couple of months, our primary focus has been really driving health and safety of our customers and crew members. We have been flying planes. We have people working at airports and offices, across the network. We're also extremely focused on, supporting our business financially and securing the financial wellness of this company. As you can imagine, it's critical infrastructure for this country and also for the globe, and we need to protect this industry. We've done several large, initiatives and changes that is really focused on health and wellness. We're taking a very, leadership approach in this, driving, a global standard, whether it's, building a plan called Safety from Ground Up, introducing masks as mandatory in our flights, even piloting ultraviolet cleaning process in our planes. Most recently, JetBlue has been very innovative in its approach in protecting the health and safety of our crew members, and also being a leader in driving, a safe travel and a frictionless travel for our customers. Technology has played a very key role for us, not just, driving the big change that's happening in this industry with this constrained environment, but also leading the change in terms of, our frictionless travel experience, whether it's biometrics or contactless travel. All these things that we've done in the past is just being accelerated into the future for us to drive a big change that's in front of us.
Ish, are people traveling more again now? How is that looking?
Well, while we say it's absolutely safe to travel, we're not actively promoting people to travel because of a lot of challenges across different parts of the network. Our demand has started seeing some level of recovery. People are starting to travel. Our planes are probably running, about 1/3 to half of its capacity. We've also blocked the middle seats, so that's helping people to get more comfortable, flying us. Obviously, we saw a positive trend in May and June, and in July we started seeing some reverse trends in terms of our markets in Florida and California reacting negatively. I'm optimistic. JetBlue has a fantastic brand, and with our safety programs that we've put in place, people love the social interaction at some point, and once they feel comfortable, I'm positive this industry will bounce back.
Yeah. How about you, Mehdi? What's been the impact of the pandemic on CatchPoint?
Yeah, thank you, Irving. So we are about 260 employees across the US and India, and we went into lockdown mode on March 12th. And most of our employees were always working from home, so it was an interesting experiment. We did a dry run on March 12th, and then we told everybody to stay. And since then, we've been mostly focused on the wellness of our employees, making sure that they have working desks, chairs, air conditioning in India, where it's very hot right now, making sure that our employees are comfortable, and spending a lot of time communicating. So I think over communication is extremely important because there is no water cooler, there is no conference rooms. So spending a lot of time on making sure that we are connected to our employees. So that's our primary focus, and obviously helping and supporting our customers that are also working now from home. So making sure that we do not let them down. They rely on us for all their monitoring needs. And so making sure that we maintain the same level of customer service and availability is important.
And you've been able to do that, Mehdi?
So far, so good. Yes, so far, so good. No complaint there. We just won an award on customer support for
that's good.
For the third year in a row. So we are maintaining our levels of support, and everybody's dedicated.
Yeah, very good. So let me now turn to how has working from home worked? What has worked well and what has not? Anish, I'd like to start with you because as I understand it from our interaction last year when I was one of the judges in the CIO Symposium, I learned that JetBlue has been using work from home practices for a long time with many of your customer service personnel. Is that correct?
Absolutely, Irvin. We have been very innovative in this space since day one of our launch back in early 2000. Our customer support crew members have embraced a work from home model. All our customer support team members, about 2,800 of them work from their homes.
2,800 you've had working from home. So,
correct.
And what kinds of processes and technologies have you developed over the last 20 years to facilitate doing that? And are these the same kinds of things that you see continuing to develop into the future?
We always say innovation is in JetBlue's DNA, and we've always been well prepared as how we stay connected. In the business of travel and hospitality, staying connected is by far the most important thing. And we have absolutely driven innovation in our approach in terms of looking beyond what many companies do. I'll share a few things. JetBlue launched its first aircraft with a customer support model that is predominantly work from home, and these are days when the concept of voice over IP didn't even exist, and JetBlue was one of the early customers of the technology even before the company name Avaya was in place, and we were one of the pilots for them in the early days of the evolution of Avaya. And then you think about how we have several thousands of our inflate and our pilots that have historically embraced technology to stay connected. We were the first in the industry to launch electronic cockpit. Our pilots have always had a laptop in the planes since day one, all our crew members have an iPad, in-flight crew members and pilots have an iPad, and they have connectivity. So keeping our crews informed helps us stay connected, not just to the crews, but also keeping our customers engaged, whether it's through in-flight Wi-Fi that we launched a few years ago, or all the connected crew that we have and people able to work from home. JetBlue has always taken a very innovative approach in the technology area.
Yeah, what's interesting as I'm listening to you is that for many of us, work from home is more having meetings from home and things like that, which is very important, and having conferences like this one from home and so on. It sounds like for you in JetBlue, this was really operational. That is, people couldn't make a reservation or find out things if you didn't have work from home, and you couldn't deal with the pilots and the flight attendants and the crews if they didn't have operational stuff. So for you, this has been operational from day one. Is that correct?
Correct. There are some work groups like technology. Historically, we come into offices and we work both at home and offices. And there are work groups like pilots, in-flights, and our customer support that 100% work remote. So JetBlue has a very flexible operating model where we support our crew members, whether you work 100% remote or you work in the offices with the technology, both the hardware and the software products that can create a flexible workplace. Obviously, think about days when you had things like Hurricane Sandy, where we couldn't open our offices, and a vast majority of our people had to work remote, and still the airline was operational. So we always focus on business continuity. We focus on safety and wellness of our people. But obviously, our sincere thanks to all the frontline crew members who still have to come to the airports or maintain a plane or fly the plane. When we call remote workforce, it still needs people's physical presence in many cases for them to do their jobs.
Sure. No, of course. Mary, how about you at Catchpoint? What's been your experience with the transition to working from home? What has worked well, and what has been challenging and you're still working on?
Sure. So the most challenging thing that still exists today is the human interaction. It is when we do surveys of our employees, that's one thing that keeps coming back over and over again. Zoom cannot replace a good meeting in front of a whiteboard, be able to think and design. The majority of our employees have transitioned fairly seamlessly to work from home. We had to adapt. Obviously, we maintain a very large fleet of data centers around the world, so we still have relying on people that need to go into data centers. We have also a component of our business that has to ship equipment to customers. So we had to literally equip some of our folks with enough stock and inventory of mini computers, mini servers, etc., to ship to folks. So that has been a little bit challenging. But other than that, the transition has been smooth. Right now, we just need to keep focusing on this interaction problem, the whiteboarding, the design and thinking that cannot, unfortunately, in my opinion, still be achieved via Zoom alone. And then the next thing, and we just did a survey among a few CIOs, and it matches a little bit what we're seeing. A lot of people, a lot of employees that work from home are starting to struggle a little bit with, obviously, mental health, physical health issues, because sitting and not moving around is starting to have an impact on morale, to be honest.
Yeah, and first of all, before turning to the questions from the audience, we already have two. Let me ask the audience if they have any questions. Please put them in the Q&A panel of this section. Maddie, one of the, I've read research on working from home, And one of the things people point out is that, so for employees that have been working together for 10, 20 years, say, being separated and working remotely, they know each other, that works really well. But when you are onboarding new people, or when you have people who've only been in the company several months, that's a very different story because they have not become integrated. How do you handle that?
I don't have an answer for you, and we're dealing with this as we speak. So there are two things that are happening, and you hit on one of them very nicely. So for folks that have been working together for a long time, they can finish each other's sentences to some degree.
Right.
But they still need to meet, and they still need to. Again, there is that especially in software engineering and engineering in general. I think it's important to this concept of whiteboarding that I keep hammering. So the biggest challenge is actually the newbies, the new employees that we're hiring. And the ones that are the most impacted are the ones that are just out of college. And we have a few of them that literally were hired in March and recently as of last week. And the fact that the onboarding is remote, there is no attachment, there is no water cooler, there is no kitchen where people can learn from that tribal knowledge is extremely devastating, in my opinion. The other challenge that we're facing, actually, it's a positive thing. So before we were mostly focused on having offices and hiring people in our New York headquarters, in Boston, and in Bangalore. But with the pandemic, what we realized is we don't care where people work anymore. And so we hire for talents. So not only now we are dealing with onboarding newer people that, especially the young ones that are just graduated from college, but how do we onboard employees that are very, very remote and completely distributed? So the benefit is now we're hiring for talent, and we're discovering that we are, because we're not limited to certain polls, we are literally finding unbelievable candidates, and we're hiring them. We're learning how to onboard, and we're trying to network with other CEOs and CMOs and CIOs of our customers to say, hey, how are you guys doing it? Because we need to learn from the best.
In reading some research on working from anywhere, companies like the U.S. Patent and Trade Office, the USPTO, has had such a program for a number of years. I learned that, and people can request to be part of that. But I think that when they want them to come back to their headquarters in Virginia every so often, I don't know, several times a year, to be part of that. So yes, you can work from anywhere, but they're trying, and remember, this is all pre-pandemic, to get them in the proximity for several times a year. And for the USPTO, that's worked well. I wonder if that's a potential answer. Ish, let me turn to you. So how do you onboard your new customer service reps and, flight attendants, whatever, and how do they become part of JetBlue? How do you get them into operationally, let's say you can do that, but you want them to feel like JetBlue employees. So what have you done to make that happen?
Irving, that's a great question. JetBlue absolutely takes a lot of pride in our culture, and our culture focuses on some key values, which is basically safety, caring, integrity, passion, and fun. And we have a very unique program called the Orientation Program that happens every 2 weeks in Orlando. We bring in several hundred crew members prior to this pandemic, and the leadership team, from starting with our CEO to each one of us, we spend a lot of time with our crew members, whether it's in flight or technology or customer support, really bringing them on board to a 2-day formal session. We are also fortunate in our industry that most of our crew members need to go through some sort of recurrent training every year or every other year. So we get an opportunity to meet them and stay connected through them through formal training programs that happen. And we have a place called
the training includes the customer service reps as well.
Absolutely. A lot of these people will be part of the recurrent training program because things change a lot in our industry, and we want to keep our crew members current and also regulatory compliance, and more than anything culturally connected to JetBlue. I'll use a few things. Over the past 6 months, I would say we've probably stayed more connected to our crew members than in a normal time. We spend enormous amount of time in different airports. We host pocket sessions and things like that on a normal day. Our leadership is extremely present. And I always say, I spend 25 days of my life in a month traveling to different JetBlue locations or even to our partner locations. Our partners are a very large extension of JetBlue, and we couldn't live without our technology partners or our operational partners that support us, right? So, but the last 6 months, we have taken a very conscious effort to stay even more connected to virtual pocket sessions or virtual town halls. Microsoft Teams has been a great enabler for us. Almost every week, our CEO to our Chief Operating Officer, President, each one of the leaders is hosting, company-wide pocket sessions or department-wide pocket sessions to share what is actually happening in our industry, what is happening in JetBlue. But even beyond that, I will say this, I try to reach out to at least 10 of my crew members every day, personal one-on-one calls to, stay connected with them. The virtual world has not been easy for many of us. I always say JetBlue is in the business of, providing social experiences, and the virtual world makes it difficult when you can't see people or you can't speak to people in real time. And we're doing our best to keep connected, to understand what goes on behind the screens, and be more inclusive and thoughtful in our approach in terms of staying engaged. It's been tough, but we're doing our best. It's I keep reminding my folks, we are still in the middle of this pandemic and the crisis, so let's not redesign something that we don't know what the future holds for. We are still learning, but we're doing everything possible to make it work.
And hey, Irving, I wouldn't mind going back if it's okay with you. So we've done a few things as well. The number one is we used to rely a lot on tribal knowledge. So one of the things that we've learned through this pandemic is write everything down. If you want to onboard people easier, write things down. So this is a shift in our culture.
So instead of relying on oral history only, let's have written history.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Or at least put it on video, right?
Right. But something that can be consumable by everybody at any time, anywhere. So that's number one. Number two is from an office perspective, where before we used to have these big offices, one of the things that we are looking at is, instead of, very similar a little bit to your USPTO example, is instead of having a headquarter where everybody needs to come in, is more regional offices where 10, 15 employees that live in the same area can get together and share that. The third thing we did is focus on our learning and development. So we are doubling down and investing heavily on anything and everything that has to do with employee empowerment and making sure that we connect and develop them. And so we just hired a few people that are going to take us to the next step. And then one thing that Ish said that I really liked, and we've been practicing it seriously since March 12th, is a weekly all hand with all of our employees. They need to know what's going on. Also celebrate the birthdays, the anniversaries, virtual cakes, human things. And then I personally my entire executive team and I call about 10 employees on average on a daily basis. No Zoom, just a regular cell phone, people are a little bit tired of being on camera sometimes. And just asking how are they doing? What do they need? And don't talk about the pandemic so much, because I think between the news and everything else, it's too much. But just having that human connection with your folks is extremely powerful.
Yeah, no, that sounds very, very important. Let me start turning to some of the questions. And Ish, here is a question from Jorge Aponte Gomez. And he's asking whether the technologies that you've had available in JetBlue and maybe across aviation industries can be used in other industries to help better deal with remote work and dealing with people who are working remotely operationally. What's your view of that, Ish?
Okay, thanks for the question. We always believe in one thing. We are leveraging consumer technologies from other industries to help us out, whether it's staying connected and even thinking about the 5G advancements that's happening now, our partnership with Verizon and Microsoft and Dell. Most of these technologies are pretty much consumer-driven technologies, and we're just leveraging them. Obviously, some of the tools that has come from the ventures, the JetBlue technology ventures that we are leveraging right now, has a broader applicability beyond just the travel hospitality industry. And we are seeing some great startup companies that we are leveraging now that can go beyond the travel space into different industry segments. And it's been such a great learning experience for us leveraging our ventures now.
Yeah. And that can be extended to other industries, correct?
Absolutely. We're seeing a lot of contactless technologies that is coming through our ventures. Some data science tool that are used for demand prediction. That was historically we looked at through the lens of demand prediction for aviation that can go into retail and that can go into different spaces. Any place where you move products or you manage people or drive experiences, I think most of the technologies that we are seeing can be leveraged across many industries.
Yeah, and the second question we got from Greg Morley in the UK was very much along the part that you just touched on, that Greg says that they are a construction company in the UK with multiple sites, and they're doing a lot of work to ensure safety with PPEs and touchless visitor management, biometric security. And what that means, of course, in the planes, that goes without saying, or in the airport, but even in offices, our view of how to make it safe to be in offices, even if you're not going to be in the office 5 days a week, even if, as Mehdi says, you come in for training and whatever, I suspect, Mehdi, that the office experience, even after this is behind us, will be a lot more careful in the future. Do you agree with that?
I totally agree with you, Irving. So we've had a touchless experience in our offices for the past 3-4 years. We use a product from a company called OpenPath based in Los Angeles. We've deployed that. It works great. It allows us to control who gets in, who gets out using your phone. So your phone becomes your key for everything, and it allows us, even in the pandemic situation, we had one of our employees that was unfortunately diagnosed with COVID. It allowed us to do contact tracing literally within 3 seconds to be able to see who else was in the office, in what part of which door they came through, that kind of stuff. So I think anything and everything touchless contact.
Did you do the contact tracing yourself? Because that's become a huge issue nationally.
Yes, we did. Again, we just use the tool that we have in our office to open and close doors with our phones. and it literally just gave us a heat map of who
I
else was in
see.
the office at that time, and then we were able to
And
look at the minute level who else was in the office, which was.
And that's an operational tool that
Yes,
you. Okay.
that's correct.
That's very interesting. Ish, I'm assuming you do similar things, correct?
Yes. Irvin, one of the things, as we all learn through this pandemic, one thing we need to keep in our mind is, whatever we do, we need to build something that is sustainable for the long term. When we say social distancing is needed for the future, let's make sure that our infrastructure can support and sustain 6-foot social distancing. Can you imagine when you're flying at full schedule in JFK or London Heathrow, and now I have to maintain 6-foot social distance, and you have a full capacity of customers coming in? Your lines will be probably as long as Manhattan. So a lot of these things that we are putting in place, we obviously do it to protect the health and wellness of our people and our customers today. Yeah. That's what is needed. But we also need to start thinking about the lessons learned and also build something to the future that the infrastructure can handle. That is what we are focused on. How do you take the lessons learned, but also build a sustainable model into the future that can scale up to different levels of our operations as we kind of recover from the demand. We're still in the middle of this. A lot of procedures that we are putting in place is designed to manage a crisis, not designed to manage a full, recovery mode. And obviously, we'll take the lessons learned and we will, change the models as we see. But I don't know if I know all the answers today, as whatever we're putting in will work 6 months from now when there is a cure or a vaccine available.
Well, but the way I think about this, after 9/11, life got transformed, and people thought, oh my God, nobody will want to fly anymore. And nobody will want to live in New York City anymore. And we took some incredible measures with TSA and security and securing the doors of the pilots and on and on and on and on. And it's fair to say, yes, it was a bit more of a pain to fly than before. You have to go through TSA and so on. And yes, when you are in Grand Central in New York, you see members of the National Guard with weapons because everybody's much more alert. But I think we can all agree that flying between 2001 and 2019 exploded, the volume of flying. And that big cities like New York and London and so on have thrived. People sort of adjusted. My expectation is just like we had to adjust to security, we now have to do that with public health. That all of a sudden, public health was a backwater thing that we didn't pay attention to. Boy, regardless of when we get a vaccine, public health will become paramount. Do you both agree that this is likely to be a major change in society?
I agree. I agree very much.
Yeah, go ahead, Mehdi, and then Ish.
Yeah, so I totally agree with you. Obviously, we're going to adapt. We'll come up with solutions. Some will be a little bit more painful, like taking our shoes off. Maybe people will check our temperatures at the airport. That's the way they check your luggage. And it will be okay. I think it's going to be totally okay. And again, we're going to innovate. That's what we do. And we'll come up with TSA Pre, where you pay a little bit more and maybe you won't go through a long line at some point, or you'll have a way of telling via phone your health status of the day, like what we have for our employees, if you have any sign. So I think we'll innovate, and I think we'll get back to pre-2019 very quickly, as soon as there is a vaccine, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, I think it may take longer than a vaccine. Right. Oh, no, but let me tell you why I think, because just like with 9/11, once we became sensitive to the impact of terrorism on cities and flights and so on, we didn't just handle the one in 9/11, we now have to be watchful for the future.
Sure.
And now that we have become sensitive, that along with globalization and urban density, we are more subject to pandemics, the answer there is public health measures that go way beyond COVID-19. That's the feeling, and I'm optimistic. Ish, are you optimistic that we will learn how to do this and get back to the new normal this way?
Irvin, the world has seen many, many dramatic changes, right? We speak about 9/11 in aviation, but even the concept of flying, 106 years ago or 107 years ago was very new to this world, and people started flying. The one thing, at least in our industry, we are very proud about is how much we drive safety and security, and how many changes we've put in place to just make it better and better every time. So I'm 100% sure, we will embrace the best things that come out of this and make our industry much more safer and secure for people to travel. But also on the other side, there are many, many industries that has gone through radical changes. Think about distribution business with Amazon. Think about online banking. 20 years ago, when you thought about banking, I don't think many people would have thought that you would never step into a bank again, right? Everything is technology driven now. We should also look at the very positive things technology has brought in, and absolutely to your question, I think people will embrace the change and it'll be different. I'm hoping the infrastructure changes along with that to accommodate these changes. Otherwise, it'll be a constraint for us.
Yeah, in the music industry, with the change from CDs to streaming, what people wrote is we turned dollars into pennies, because the CDs, you did that, and the music industry went through hell, but they adjusted to streaming. Now the movie industry and the video industry has adjusted to streaming in the way. So you're making a very good point, Ish and Mehdi, especially since the internet, in the digital economy, it's been one change after another. And some industries have been hit much, much harder than others. But in the end, that's what survival is all about.
Sure, but there is one concern, Irving, in my opinion, just because I deal with that from an internet connectivity. That's what I do for a living to some degree. One of the things I'm very concerned about, especially in the US, more than anywhere else, to be honest, is the digital divide.
Of course.
I live in Los Angeles. I only have one way of connecting to the internet where I live. If you go to a colleague of mine in Amsterdam, he can choose between 5 ISPs, and they all provide 1 gigabit connection to the internet for like $20 a month. We are very, very far behind in the US in terms of competition, access to the internet. And I don't know if we can make sure for every person in the US to not have a digital divide, because you look at the death of COVID-19, it's the healthcare divide that is causing a lot of death, right? Is the digital divide also going to be a problem where we're going to leave generations and an entire population out of the mix? And it was nice to see yesterday a bunch of CEOs in New York coming together and pledging to hire 100,000 people from various communities. I mean, it affects us because we're headquartered in New York. So we've been working with the Colin Powell School to help people from the Bronx and other areas in New York to get jobs in the technology space. But that's a very big problem. I think we cannot just ignore. And hopefully, Elon Musk with his Starlink program can help bring broadband access to other people.
Yeah, we have a question here from my IDE colleague, Michael Schrager, who asks, what new metrics or KPIs have emerged to help you more carefully monitor your people and your customers in remote environments, including assessing engagement and emotional and mental health? Whoever one of you two wants to take this first, please go ahead.
Irvin, I'll go first. One of the best things JetBlue has done historically is, monitoring both our customer engagement through Net Promoter Score and our crew member. Each one of us are our crew members, so we have 23,000 crew members, and our crew member engagement through our engagement scores. These are real metrics that measure how either the customer journey is going through or the crew member experience on a daily basis is happening, and we get that feedback on a periodic basis. In terms of customers, it's very frequent, almost by the trip, and then in terms of our crew members, it's a very frequent basis. We stay connected. The overarching themes that has popped up in terms of our customers is a lot of stuff that we used to get feedback about on-time performance and the in-flight entertainment and all those things have completely changed into are you practicing safety and well-being of the flights? Are you communicating enough? Things like are you communicating on the loads? Are you communicating in advance about any flight changes? People are very understanding. Our customers are extremely understanding of what the world is going through and very empathetic about what the crews are going through. So kudos to the people who travel with JetBlue. Like, the customers have been amazingly good to us, and we are reciprocating with information and procedural changes such as implementing face masks, putting in the middle seat blocks, UV cleaning. These are the priorities for them. People want to feel, safe and secure, and, concerns about health is kind of the most important thing. And things like contactless travel has become a much more important thing for them. In terms of our crew members, everybody is, especially in JetBlue, the two things that, people are worried about in terms of our workforce is, protecting their jobs. That's number one. This industry is going through a lot of turbulence. And the second theme is around, using mass transit to come to work. And these are the top two things in their mind. Am I going to have a job in the next 6 months? Or, if I'm going to be expected to come to work and sit in an office leveraging public transport. And we are very fortunate, and thankful to the administration, in Washington for, supporting us through the CARES Act 1, which has given certain level of, job security for our crew members. And we are working very hard not to furlough people. And also our voluntary programs with pay cuts and time offs has really helped us, secure our financial future. And we're also very accommodative of, people, who can't come to work, how we address their needs. And obviously remote workforce has helped us a lot, but we're very thoughtful in our approaches. And if I put the top 4 things that customers and crew members are looking at, is really health and safety, their jobs, it's access to public transport, it's communications. That's kind of the bottom line.
Mehdi, any comments?
Yeah, around the KPIs, it's not so much whether or not you should focus on creating new KPIs, but maybe it's just looking at what you already have and focusing on the ones that matter the most and being super laser focused on them. Obviously, I think we, at least at Catchpoint, what we focused the most on is all things that are customer related. So our CSAT scores, our NPS scores, those kind of things, and then our employee NPS scores. So that very simple. Keep it simple. Because then it's more actionable, in my opinion, instead of looking at 20,000 KPIs. On our customer side, what we are seeing is one of the things they're struggling the most with is, a CIO used to have, maybe 3, 5, 10 different offices, super high-speed connection to the office, Cisco or Avaya or whatever routers and networking gear, so everything was top-notch. And now what they're dealing with is, instead of having 2,000 employees in 3 offices, is they have 2,000 employees in 2,000 offices. And so connectivity is literally paramount. And then you have the children or on Netflix or doing something else, and that can have an impact on productivity. So they're trying to measure productivity, not so much on how many hours you spend at work, but are you being able to deliver the things on time? So more of an outcome versus just hey, did you clock in 9 hours a day kind of thing? So those are going to be some interesting new KPIs, is more the outcome versus just like how many hours people are spending behind the desk.
Yeah, and that begins to answer a question we got from Mutaz Efranji, which is, are we seeing opportunities for cost efficiency and reductions and improved productivity? And you just mentioned, Mehdi, that when you are all together, maybe we measure productivity differently than when you have 2,000 offices.
Right.
And so this may be something that, in other words, are you getting the work done is going to be the key thing. How about you, Ish? Anything to add to this notion of efficiency and productivity as a result of changes being taken with COVID?
Irvin, we have publicly stated, our CFO has done a fantastic job securing our financial future, but we have mentioned many times this industry is in the worst of its times, and we will be a much smaller airline as we come out of this crisis. And our expectation is it's going to take a couple of years for us to reach back to where we were in 2019. With that said, we are all constantly looking at opportunity to kind of reset JetBlue to make it a much leaner and better airline. Obviously, our passion is to drive great products and great experiences for our customers and have the best of the best workplace for our crew members. And we're doing everything to preserve our crew members' jobs and also drive a very healthy travel experience for our customers. But we are looking at every single opportunity to reset the cost base for JetBlue and kind of future-proof JetBlue, because our financial wellness is what keeps us in business, and we're working very hard in that space.
Of course. So we have time for just one more question, and because we're almost out of time, let's keep this answer brief. Jaime Safianov asks whether you too are looking at any emerging innovative technologies to improve the customer and employee experience given remote work and remote interactions with customers. If so, can you just very briefly state what kinds of new technologies you may be evaluating?
So one of the things I'm the most excited about, just because, again, more and more people are going to be working from home for a foreseeable future. Even after COVID-19, I think many people are going to find that it's better to stay at home and work remotely and have more time with their families, and they're going to be more productive. So with that in mind, I think the demand on the internet infrastructure is going to change, and one thing I'm looking forward to is more this kind of technologies around edge computing, where you can bring some more compute capabilities as close as possible to the end users. The cloud is not edge, but how do we get closer to the employees so we can give them a first-class experience? If anybody of you flew on JetBlue, you can attest on their Mint program. It's unbelievable. And so we need to deliver that Mint experience, first-class experience to every employee, no matter where they are. And so those are the kind of technologies I'm excited about. 5G, of course, as well.
Mehdi, will 5G make a difference?
Irvin, I would love to get a 5G device. I think I'm a little bit sick and tired of the vaporware. I think I'm more interested in edge.
I got it. So when you see it, let's have that discussion.
Sounds good.
Okay, Anish, you have the final word. What leading edge technologies you, as both the CTO and Chief Digital Officer, are looking at to make this whole experiences better in the future?
Irvin, one of the areas I think it's absolutely promising for me is the data science space. We have a fantastic leader, Ben Singleton, who's driving a massive transformation in the data science space, leveraging machine learning, AI. Just the sheer ability to predict things and monitor things and react to things, leveraging these technologies has been just phenomenal. The tools that are available, the data sets that are available, the historic way of looking things will dramatically change in the future with data science. We've started seeing some significant enablers in the last 6 months, and it's just a starting point for us. I think it's going to go through leaps of evolution into the next couple of years.
Anish, do you expect these efforts to accelerate the embrace of analytics, of AI, and things like that, now that we see that we need them more than ever?
Absolutely. I can tell you, as we saw this pandemic grow, one of the most important thing we needed as a tool is customer no-show prediction. People were booking their tickets and they were canceling at the last minute, and because there was different challenges for them, and being able to even predict customer no-shows and our demand curves and stuff like that, leveraging data sets beyond what we had in JetBlue is just fascinating. And there's a lot of publicly available information that can completely transform our business. And we're leveraging data science to every possible extent now in the future.
So this concludes our fireside chat. Let me thank Mehdi Daoudi and Anish Sundaram for a very, very interesting discussion and lots of ideas as I'm getting from the Q&A. I'm sorry I wasn't able to get to all the questions from the audience. And here is back to you, Alan or Jiro.
Thank you so much, Irving. Thank you, everybody.
Children's Cancer Institute is solely focused on finding new treatments to cure kids of cancer. There are 300,000 children diagnosed with cancer every year, and very sadly here in Australia, 3 children die every single week.
We're really trying to work out how we can improve outcomes in kids with cancer. And we're trying to take a precision medicine approach, which means we're going to measure lots of information as much as possible. Inherently, that produces an enormous amount of data that really makes this a data science more than a biological experiment.
There's a number of us at Equinix that have had experiences with childhood cancer, and it's a particular focus of an area that we would like to assist.
This year's 20 years since I went through having chemotherapy myself, and back then they gave me 6 months of chemotherapy. It's a blanket approach.
Kids get different cancers than adults. You can't just take the treatment you would give an adult and in some way dilute that and pump that into the body of a growing child. You will not get the results that you need.
Every childhood cancer is different, so the more children that we can get through this program, that's really something special.
And the ability for us to provide them the solution that we have helps accelerate their capability to diagnose the cancers and then customise cures for children.
When we find new discoveries through our research at Children's Cancer Institute, we always do that in collaboration with other centres around the world. And the reason we do that is that we need to have clinical trials that open with more children involved.
At the Children's Cancer Institute, we have an in-house high-performance computing system which really didn't scale very well for the terabyte per data challenge.
So coming with Equinix, they get access to a whole range of public cloud service providers, network service providers, and other medical research institutions where they can interconnect directly inside our four walls and speed up that diagnosis timeframe.
The Equinix Cloud Exchange allows us to have a direct, secure connection into our cloud providers and fundamentally connect globally to our collaborators so that we can seamlessly integrate with their systems and our systems.
So we can take our data that we're generating in-house, compare it to data generated at Philadelphia or Memphis or Heidelberg, and bring this data into the same cloud environment so we can start to find that signal in the noise.
The partnership between the Children's Cancer Institute, Optus and Equinix has been able to provide us with a solution without needing the carrier costs involved in setting up a connection.
We really believe that this opportunity to partner with Equinix and their global network of data centers will allow us to beat this challenge, will allow us to integrate our data from Australian patients with data that exists overseas and help to understand and make insights into this disease and ultimately overcome pediatric cancer for good.
Every single day, we all come to work with one goal in aim. We are all here to cure every child of cancer, and we know we're going to do it. So that passion when you walk through this building is palpable.
What the Children's Cancer Institute of Australia are doing is revolutionary.
I think it's really proud for Equinix that we're being able to assist the process, and also fully invested in the mission of CCIA in curing childhood cancer.
Well, thanks a lot, Irving and Ish and Mehdi. That was a really tremendous discussion. I enjoyed it very much. And special thanks to you, Irving, for being our moderator and helping plan the panel. That was very much appreciated. So now we're moving on to the second part of today's episode. This is driving customer experience strategies through technology. And I will remind the audience one more time, if you have questions, to use the Q&A at the bottom. But without further ado, let me introduce Paul Michelman. Paul is the editor-in-chief of the MIT Sloan Management Review. He is also the host and executive producer of SMR's 3 Points podcast. And I'll point out that the MIT SMR was recently named the world's second most influential publication. So please join me in welcoming Paul Michelman. Hi, Paul.
Hi, Alan. Thanks so much for having me. I'm really delighted to be here and to be moderating our next panel, Driving Customer Experience Through Technology. So let me introduce in turn our panelists. First, Gail Evans, as Mercer's first Chief Digital Officer and a member of the executive leadership team. Gail leads a dedicated team focused on driving and delivering Mercer's digital transformation strategy. In her previous role as Mercer's Global Chief Information Officer, she oversaw the transformation and modernization of Mercer's technology with an emphasis on innovation and security of Mercer's data assets. So welcome, Gail. Next, Dr. Renee Richardson Goslin is a senior lecturer in the Management Science Group at the MIT Sloan School of Management and a principal research scientist at MIT's Initiative on the Digital Economy. She is a 2020 honoree on the Thinkers 50 Radar list of people who are putting a dent in the universe. And last and certainly not least, Akash Khurana is the Vice President, Chief Information and Chief Digital Officer for McDermott, Inc., a leading provider of integrated engineering, procurement, construction and installation, front-end engineering, and design and module fabrication services for upstream field developments worldwide. Gail, Renee, Akash, welcome to you all.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you for having us, Paul.
Glad to be here.
So do I have someone who's willing to be the first victim? But actually first, before we go there, let me do a little bit of housekeeping. So members of our audience, as Alan just reminded you, we welcome your questions, which you can submit at any time using the Q&A function in Zoom. Our program will be divided into 3 sections. First, I'll grill the panel with some questions I prepared. Then a little before the top of the hour, Renee has graciously agreed to take the helm and share some highlights of her recent research, which is highly relevant to the topic of our discussion. And then we will return to take your questions and to continue the conversation with our full panel. So back to my question of a moment ago. Anyone want to volunteer to go first? I'll be easy on you, I promise.
I'm happy to go first.
I knew it would be Gail. So what's the biggest challenge? Or maybe we'll make this a little bit, what is one big challenge that you've faced since the onset of the pandemic with respect to customer experience?
I think it's understanding the customer's behavior in this new virtual digital world. And what of that customers' trends are here to stay. So it's really focused on a better understanding of the experience, because it's no longer these episodic interactions. It's really taking a look at the customer journey and the multiple interactions they have inside your firm, but also outside your firm, and figuring out how best to serve them.
Is there something that stands out that you think is likely to stick?
The value that the customers will expect today will stay around. And we need to understand their value, the meaning of their value, and what they seek. And that will stay with us. And there will be a bunch of technology that'll help us. But as I'm sure Renee will share, that we have to also be worried about the ethics in some of the algorithms and ways in which we monitor that trend.
Thank you. So Akash, I'm going to ask you the same question, kind of one big challenge that you faced over the past, used to say 3 months, I guess it's 6 months now.
Yeah. So Paul, in our case, we, being an engineering and construction organization, we have a heavy footprint of projects which are large capital projects all across the globe, which require people, both from our customers, our partners, and our employees, to be on the ground to deliver on the manufacturing aspects, fabrication aspects, and then, of course, collecting all the information to make sure that these large capital investments are on track to deliver for the large energy initiatives all across the globe. So as COVID hit us, we found ourselves in a situation where we have to do a lot of this work remotely. And the collaboration that is required from all the way from engineering, where we look at large scale engineering models, we now have engineers all across the globe distributed. And how do you do engineering reviews? How do you do red markings? How do you provide feedback? So we had to rely very quickly on the technology. And in many ways, digital acceleration that we have seen just in the last 6 months has been more than last many years. And that's just one example of how we overcame the challenge of collaboration, collecting the information, and making sure that we are keeping our projects going and delivering for our customers.
Oh, great. And I think probably a little bit later in the discussion, we can get back into that in a little more detail. So thank you. So Renee, you're coming at this from a different vantage point, right? As a researcher and an educator. So what have you observed in terms of perhaps some trends with respect to major challenges in customer experience during the pandemic?
Well, I think it's been a time certainly where there are more research questions that are being generated every day because of what's going on. And unfortunately, a lot less time to pursue them. But it's been, frankly, surprising in some ways. But also, I think, reaffirming some of the basic tenets of human behavior. So I come at these things from a behavioral standpoint, a behavioral economics standpoint. And so that's one of the things that I think is not a trend, right? People will continue to have cognitive biases with respect to how they attend to information, particularly in times of stress. We know that when people are sort of under duress, they tend to rely on more automatic processing. So what that means for customer experience then is it means that it's important that we design experiences that meet people where they are, that allow them to feel confident when they're using heavily automatic thinking. That also means that there's a tremendous opportunity to provide value, as Gail was mentioning, value in multiple forms, in giving people time, in giving people a sense of control, particularly in a time when many people feel lack of control over their lives, in giving people a sense of agency, and also in supporting them, whether it be monetary or the cultural issues that are pressing at the moment, right? And so I think from a customer experience standpoint, we really must focus on humans and having a sort of shared value as opposed to merely being extracting. People are expecting more, they're looking for more. And in this time of chaos, I think it will be the difference between brands and companies that have loyalty in the long run versus ones that are just sort of expedient in the moment.
So, Renee, one of the things that you highlight are these forces that are kind of pulling in opposite directions, right? On the one hand, we are going to be remaining more distant from each other for some undetermined period of time, but it's going to be some period of time. And yet you highlight the importance of the human, right, in the customer experience. So Gail, we'll come back around to you. You know, what if anything have you learned about the importance of human beings in the customer experience during this period of time?
Well, I think that humans are unpredictable, and the once opportunity where you could sort of predict, what your customers may want from you is different. So it's different today. They have a different lens now that they're looking through to access value in a whole different way and a different dimension. And I also think that technology helps us, like AI will help us learn more about our clients, but it will be a connectivity. It's a connected strategy around humans for me. Now they want this connection on this journey, and they want you to understand their journey. And the company that does that well, that's able to understand the journey, to be able to apply the technology to nudge or recommend or even offer information that may not be at their fingertips today, will be the company that will lead this journey. And lastly, I think some of the technology around Alexa and the NLP lends itself to maybe an impatient. Humans are becoming a bit more impatient and is looking for convenience. And I see Kpis and Renee, maybe resonating with them. And so how do we meet them where they are my thoughts.
Is that a sign that maybe our empathy for one another is beginning to wear thin?
Our CEO at Mercer, Martin Furlan, reminds us it's about the balance between economics and empathy.
Oh, interesting. So, Akash, does this ring true for you? I mean, you're operating in a very different environment of complex and of major projects where kind of operations take center stage, perhaps more than human relationships, but maybe I'm wrong. So how does your experience kind of, compare with what Gail just described?
Yeah, I would add on to what Gail just said. Humans are unpredictable, but I think humans are very adaptable. So as we found ourselves in the COVID environment, we started to experience different level of engagement when it comes to our own employee base. We went very quickly from less than 10% folks working from home to over 95% people working from home, and technology came to the table to make that happen. When we looked at our operations, like you rightly said, Paul, it's a very complex operation, very distributed all across the globe, a lot of materials, parts, machinery, people across the globe. And we took this opportunity to really figure out how we leverage technology to do the functional handoffs from one aspect of our project delivery to another. An example is engineering going to supply chain going to fabrication, construction, and at the end of the day, delivery for our customers. And what we have been able to do during this time, really work out the issues between that handover, because we are not there in person anymore. So we had to adapt and change to be able to do all of this remotely while keeping our operations going. Our customers are also adapting to us reaching out to them in a different way. The example that I shared earlier, where an engineering model review is a big element of our project delivery. It changes on a continuum basis, and we are leveraging technology to engage with our customers, provide technologies like virtual reality so we can walk through those models rather than being there in the person, being at the manufacturing site, walking through these large LNG projects or offshore projects. We are leveraging technology to give them that experience. And I believe companies who take charge of that and adapt their business models by leveraging technology will continue to stay relevant. And as a matter of fact, leverage the technology to strengthen their experience and their relationship with the customers.
Do you think that suggests some kind of permanent changes in the way you operate, particularly with respect to communicating and collaborating with your customers?
It definitely is going to make quite a few things permanent, and for the right reasons. Where we used to rely heavily on people and technology to collect this information, massive amount of information, clean through that information to drive right level of analytics. Those things are gone. We are leveraging, data lake technologies, and smart analytics technologies, AI technology to drive that decision making and providing feedback into that engine rather than relying on the face-to-face interaction, because we don't have any other option. And I think those things will continue to stay and become part of our operations going forward.
Thank you. So, Renee, I'm going to begin the next question with you. Over the past 5 or 6 months, the conversations about the transformative power of intelligent technologies to remake the customer experience have died down as we've all focused on more pressing near-term issues, mostly related to managing through the pandemic. Now, of course, technology's clearly had a leading role in this effort, but in more of a Band-Aid way than a transformative one. Should we be any less bullish on how technologies like AI or Internet of Things will transform our customer strategies, or maybe we should be more bullish?
I think we should be more bullish. I think to Akash's previous comment, there have been companies, I believe the CEO of Microsoft said in the last, then it was 3 months, now it's to your point, 6 months. But so in the last several months, they've experienced more digital transformation than they had in 2 years. Many firms are experiencing rapid transformation due to necessity. And I don't think that genie will be going back into the bottle. I think what we actually are seeing is that organizations that had already begun the process of digital transformation are best positioned to have a longevity advantage with regard to this. I don't think we'll go back to a time where, for instance, people don't expect things like contactless experiences. I think also given the change culturally that has been a result of the chaos and the pandemic of this time, I think that people have shifted in their orientation toward the ways in which they want to interact with their businesses. They expect things that weren't expected before. And it's not just immediate things like safety. I want to know that you're cleaning your places, or I want to know that you are able to ship me something conveniently. I think it's more than that. I think it includes things like, to what degree have you shown, right, that you are focused on your customer, and that you have had the ability to adjust your processes to ensure that this transition has been less painful on me than necessary, right? I think when we look at the reverberations in terms of economic as well as social reverberations of this time, there's an imprint that is happening on people. This is a generation, everyone alive now is studied, similar to people during the Great Depression, for example. And there will be an imprint that will last a very long time. And so I don't see things going back to business as usual, but I don't think we should want that. I think there have been obviously very, very many painful and rapid changes not even to. But at the same time, we're talking about things like in the previous panel, the digital divide, that many people weren't placing as much emphasis on, right? We have changed the expectation of work from home in a way that it's not stigmatized, that I hope we retain, because that allows many more people to be active in the economy. So I think we should be bullish on the role of technology. I also think we should be cautious with respect to what that means, because the time to think about the implications of our embrace and the embeddedness of technology in every aspect of our lives is now, not when it's done and packaged. And it's like, well, hang on now. What were the costs associated with doing that? And so that's the research that we're doing here at MIT.
So, Gail, has your long-term technology strategy changed at all over the past 6 months? Or have you even had time to consider whether or not your long-term technology strategy should evolve?
Well, I think at Mercer, we started to build on a technology foundation a few years ago, right? So you have to be a bit forward-thinking, and because of the rapid pace and of technology change. Some people call it VUCA, right? Volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. So we started off by taking a look at where we are today and where we want to be in the next 18 months. So we built a foundation that we actually affectionately called a Mercer OS, which was our ability to start to lean into this digital world, start to think about data foundation and connectivity across repositories of information. But more importantly, how can we serve our clients better, more efficiently, was always at the center of that journey. And so where we are today is our ability to even double down, if you may, on those digital platforms and capabilities. But let me pause, because there's also a shift, I believe, that's happening in technology from features and functions to really understanding the customer experience and being able to dynamically extract insights. So there's a shift happening. And for those companies who are just now thinking about putting the right foundation and pipes in place, they will be behind. They will be maybe fast followers or laggards as the digital excellence that's needed to propel us in the future begins to take hold.
Is it too late for the laggards? And has the kind of crisis made it almost impossible to catch up for those who haven't at least spent this time trying to accelerate their transformation?
Well, it depends on what industry you're in, right? I mean, it really depends on the industry. And, I typically don't make really, with this technology and the startups and the innovation that's happening at this pace, there's Jeff Bezos out there looking at margins and trying to figure out how to disrupt you. And so I think it makes sense. And a client, by the way, who's looking for you to serve them differently, more efficiently, more cost effectively. And when you throw all of that in to your strategies, I do think companies have to drive a lot more clarity and priority around their strategies and how what trends that the customer now and in the future will have, and how does that align with your strategy? Better clarity and a little more agile and test and learn goes a long way as well, Paul.
Thank you, Gail. So Akash, a slight twist on this question for you. We've talked about how you have deployed technology in this environment and some of the things you've learned. But if you're thinking now about your long-term technology investment strategy versus what it might have been in February, are you seeing anything different?
So I think we, as a company, always were very clear on our technology strategy, and that core IT footprint being our foundational element with the use of digital was put in place a few years ago, and how innovation fits in all of this journey. Now, in COVID, what it has done is it has actually helped us accelerate some of those initiatives, which we would have gone through a process of pilot, POC, testing the market, getting feedback, and then deploying it. I think what it has done is it has really helped us accelerate, and we are very quickly putting solutions in place, testing where the impact might be. In some cases, we don't have an option. That's the only route that we can go. And it is allowing us to scale that initiative or that product very, very quickly. So in many ways, our strategy has stayed the same, which was based on improving employee productivity, efficiency with the help of technology, improving our operational efficiency by connecting different functional handoffs, and improving our engagement with our customers, being the EPC company of choice for our customers. And technology was the core footprint across these three levers. And we have seen significant acceleration towards that strategy during this time.
Thank you. Okay, so let's transition to phase 2, where Gail, Akash, and I are going to recede into the background for a few minutes. Well, Renee has, again, kind of graciously and very generously agreed. I made a late request to ask her if she'd share some highlights of her really compelling new research. So, Renee, we're going to turn the screen over to you, and thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Paul, and thanks everybody for letting me take some time. I will not give you the full plate given in the interest of time, but I'll give you a little bit of an amuse-bouche maybe for some of the work that we're doing at MIT and some of my research, and a course on customer experience that we're launching soon. So I mentioned that I come from a behavioral perspective. So I want to share with you an example that may resonate. Imagine you're driving down a road like this. It's in a rural or suburban area, and out in front of you pops this animal. The question then is, what do you do? Now, I think the answer is a pretty obvious one. You would mash your brakes to avoid hitting the animal. And that's kind of your automatic thinking, right? You don't have to do much consideration with respect to velocity or moisture in the air. It's sort of what your body would automatically do. Now, contrast this with another decision, right? Imagine that we're in a place where we can go and have some wine outdoors, socially distanced, of course, and you're ordering a bottle of wine for the table. What would you choose? Now, if you see a wine list like this, you've got many options. And so your choice may be affected by maybe something you've had in the past, maybe a preference you have for a particular varietal. Maybe you'd ask for advice or input from the waitstaff or someone at the table. I show you these two contrasting decisions because they're examples of System 1 and System 2 thinking. System 1 is very fast, very automatic. And System 2 is far more deliberative and takes into account multiple variables and therefore is slower. You might be familiar with this if you've read the book Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. But I'm sharing this with you because this is a foundational perspective that's bigger than any trend, right? About the ways in which people make decisions and the ways in which, in a customer experience, people navigate the journey. So what's amazing about this is that you have two systems that are working and that you don't have to actually employ or rely on system two when you're thinking about what to do with this deer, because it would take too long. And you can activate system two when it's time for more complex choices. And so it's amazing that, for instance, you could read this sentence that I have placed riddled with typos, and your mind can actually understand it because your system one is automatically revising the order of the letters so that you can read the words mindful, affect, and decisions. And depending upon how familiar you are with the English language or with these words, this process may be so automatic that you didn't even realize it was happening. But though the human brain and the mind is amazing, and we have these systems, we have to be mindful, right? Because they're subject to cognitive bias. That is, the thing that happens automatically may not, in fact, be the optimal choice. And in times of crisis, as we are in now, people can sometimes revert to intuitive thinking in a way that's not necessarily optimal. So when we're devising customer experiences, right, we've got to think about how we can make experiences that provide value to our customers and help them make better choices. And that's where nudges come in. Gail mentioned nudge earlier, and it's a famous book. We can devise customer experiences that nudge people toward decisions that are actually better for them. And that can actually engender trust because we're putting the human at the center of this, not just what's most expedient or profitable for us. I should mention, by the way, as we talk about customer experiences, this also relates to within the organization. So employee experiences, as well as outside of the organization with affiliates like stakeholders, right? Or partners of partner experiences. Now, my work looks at this and thinks about CX as a different perspective, unpacking the decision journey that one has when they decide whether to purchase, when they decide whether to invest, when they decide how to make a choice, and look at it not merely as did they adopt or not, did they sign up or not, but as a whole process with a series of linked behavioral decisions that we can affect at each of these touch points, right? So the important thing is to think about these touch points and think about how increasingly the choices at each of these touch points are mediated by technology, by algorithms, by machine learning, by things that nudge us in the direction in the sake of efficiency, which everyone is really, really interested in right now. Now, this is important because people tend to talk about human versus machine, right? Particularly when we think of things like the labor force. Will the machines take our jobs, for instance? But when it comes to the ways in which people experience or make decisions in an experience along a journey, that dichotomy is really a false one. Rather, there's really more of an integration between human cognition and machine cognition. And so from the perspective of customer experience, employee experience, stakeholder experience, we need to think about how to integrate that in the optimal way. And we need to think about what is the optimal way at each of these touch points. So when I look at this through my research, there are a couple things to note, right? The first is that humans can augment AI and vice versa. But we shouldn't be biased ourselves in thinking that, oh, well, it's automatically got to be outsourced to a technological source. That's where we run into trouble and we start to lose the human element. We need to look at this through the lens, not just of what's the better mousetrap in terms of the best algorithm, but also in terms of how is the human going to view this as valuable or not. That makes the difference between whether or not your innovation will be adopted. It's not valuable in a sort of vacuum. It's valuable with respect to how humans are perceiving that value. And so the second thing to think about then is that when we think about human decision makers, neoclassical economics talks about Homo sapiens as being Homo economicus, right? Utility maximizing actors. So you may think that the experience really should be simply about being efficient, being convenient, giving the lowest price, and things of that nature. But in actuality, it's more complicated than that. People are looking for more. That's the value they're looking for. And so we're not just homo economicus, we're homo technologicus, where we have this interplay between technology and human decision-making, which I'll discuss more in my forthcoming book, little plug, coming out next year. So we're in a crucible moment. We're in a crisis moment, right? Paul, as you mentioned, we've got multiple forces. We've got a COVID pandemic, and we have people looking for advice, and they're coming from multiple sources. And these sources are sometimes in dispute and have different kind of perspectives. What can technology do? What can we do in the experience? Well, one example here, for instance, is a COVID-19 screening tool. Both Apple and Google have developed, as well as some organizations. You should actually make an appointment to get a COVID test. So you can see in the midst of this flux, technology can serve a really important purpose in the customer experience, in that it can give people a sense of control at a time where people feel an immense lack of control in a pandemic. We also, in this crucible moment, have an issue where we have a social movement around combating racism and anti-Black racism in particular. This means then that the role of technology as helpful also needs to be thought about in terms of what the implications are. So, for instance, we know with facial recognition technologies, there have been biases, and as they say, garbage in, garbage out, bad data in to train the algorithm, bad data out. But also there are biases, as I discussed before, amongst the humans who program this. And you know that, for instance, IBM and Amazon and Microsoft have stepped away from selling these kinds of technology, right, to law enforcement agencies as a means of demonstrating a different kind of value in this moment. We also see an example here of a machine learning algorithm that takes a pixelated picture of Barack Obama, upscales it, and by upscale, I mean it fills in the blanks in terms of the data, and results in a completely different race, someone who doesn't look like Barack Obama at all. So when we think about this and we think about the customer experience, we need to think about this interplay or this tension between the things that are convenient, maybe even delightful, and what the long-term impacts are for our stakeholders, and how we can examine ways in which to develop customer experiences that are beneficial for all. And then on this theme of algorithmic bias, example of a machine learning algorithm that seeks to augment data by taking names of customers and identifying the gender for you, so that if you want to understand what kinds of customers you're dealing with, this would help that. But have a look at this. In this, been a name, Megan Smith. And the algorithm says, well, Megan Smith has a 60% chance of being female. But when you add the information, Dr. Megan Smith, the algorithm flips and says now it has a 76% chance of being male. Imagine what that's like as a customer to see algorithmic bias play out in your customer experience. Imagine what that's like as an employee to revolve around or rely on these types of algorithms to make profit-based decisions, and what that means for the outcomes for your customers. So it's a time of reflection for us all, and this conversation, I think, is emblematic of that. And I just want to leave with a couple of points before we come back to the chat. I think now, because of these crises, the clarity of purpose is important, and innovation is important. You know, Paul, you asked about laggards and who's being left behind and who's not going to be able to catch up. I think that it's unfortunate if you're only now thinking about digital transformation, but I think that the organizations that have been human or customer-centric all along are better positioned, as well as the ones that have focused on customer experience, employee experience, and stakeholder experience are more able to kind of pivot and understand right away what the needs are and allocate resources accordingly. And frankly, pandemic or not, centering the human is really what you should be doing long-term. So in terms of things that are not just a fad and things that are guiding principles moving forward, I think human-centric strategy and technology is going to be important. And I think also avoiding the human inclination, the human bias to kind of turn in during times of transition and anxiety, right? People become extremely risk averse when there's uncertainty. But for organizations that want to develop experiences that provide value, you've got to actually fight that instinct, that system one instinct, so to speak, and actually think about this as a means of leaning into innovation and doing a clarity of purpose hand in hand. Secondly, customers and partners are looking for more than just kind of what's transactionally speedy, look for value and not exploitation. So nudge is a powerful thing. Nudging at these touch points is powerful, and technology we know is powerful. But doing that with a benevolent eye toward customers is a really important part of that experience. You know, they say that people leave managers, they don't leave jobs. Well, if you make your customers feel badly, then they're going to leave you regardless of whether your price is superior or whether you're the only game in town. You will be vulnerable to competitive overtures. So doing tweets and things of that nature are nice, but when we think about inequality and we think about in a crisis moment right now, examining the symbiosis between profit centers and inequality is really putting your money where your mouth is, and far more effective than platitudes. We're all trying to embrace AI, machine learning, big data. These are the buzzwords, and everyone feels like they have to check those boxes. And I'm not in any way encouraging people to become technological laggards, but I am encouraging people to remember that behind each data point is a human. And so in the customer experience, as Gail mentioned, we are learning in real time what people need. Listen, don't just collect data for it to collect dust on the shelf. Use it. Employ it, experiment and pivot, and use ethics. As we're talking about pandemic, think about what people need. As we're talking about racism and bias, think about holding people accountable. That is far more valuable in the customer experience. And last but not least, this is not comfortable for any of us. I'd much rather be sitting in a room with Akash, Paul, and Gail talking about this, but you know what? We are adaptable. So get comfortable with being uncomfortable and experiment at those touch points that I've identified. I think the organizations that will have a long-term advantage are the ones that are realizing and employing experimental methods now so that they can utilize data that helps them understand what past behavior is, giving them a greater prediction into what future behavior could be. So I'm going to stop there. Thank you so much for allowing me to share some quick points. And Paul, I'll turn it back over to you.
Renee, thank you so much. Your research is really exciting. And I think what you're uncovering right now is so important. So quickly, a reminder for our audience that you can submit questions using the Q&A function, which you'll find at the bottom of your screen. But let's dig into some of the, to at least a couple of the things that you shared with us, Renee. I mean, one of the things that that really struck me is the collisions, right, that, like it or not, we're experiencing today. There are collisions of simply what's going on in the world, right? The compounding crises, as you note, but there seems to be a collision between the employee experience and the customer experience, a collision between kind of mission and morality and business strategy. Yes. You know, for better or for worse, and we hope maybe more for better than for worse, that we're all trying to untangle. So I'm going to attempt to make a question out of this, and Akash will begin this round with you. But let's begin by talking about the relationship between the employee experience and the customer experience. Clearly, those things were related before the pandemic. Clearly, they were related before, you know, what we hope is American companies at least experiencing a crucible moment in trying to address racial injustice. But I mean, have you witnessed kind of a further merging of those two phenomena, employee and customer?
Yeah, we have always used same approach when we talk about deploying technology with CX in mind. We have heavily utilize the framework, which is very well known as design thinking. And it's been a consistent framework for us, both internally as well as externally. We go through a very structured process of understanding what the needs are, really deep diving into the journey of our employees, our customers, cleaning out what the pain points are. Understanding is a solution, both from process and technology perspective, feasible, whether it's in our portfolio of technologies today. Is it something that we can develop, secure IP on? And the next step for us is to understand the viability. Is there ROI? Is there a business case? And also the ethics component. What's the impact on the human side of that technology? And this framework has really allowed us to bring the two worlds together. And we take a lot of pride in saying that being an EPC company, we have a very complex operations. We understand our customers have a very complex operation. So the technology and the products that we build using this framework with CX in mind, we consume internally first, make sure that it is fully vetted out, and then we go through the same process with our customers. Now, in the COVID environment, that process is purely virtual, and collaboration technology is coming into play. But that's where the collision is. I think the approach internally and externally for us has always been very similar, and it continues to prove good results for us with the same framework that we continue to apply.
Gail, how does your experience compare to what Akash just described? I mean, every industry's got to be different. Every company's got to be different.
I think it's similar. I think you put the colleague in the center of their ecosystem, and the customer in the center of the ecosystem, and they are connected. You know, a happy colleague serves your clients happier, makes your clients happier. But for us, we've looked at the tools and the processes that our colleagues have lots of pain points. I mean, it could be a very simple as, automating time entry. Tasks may seem simple, but it could be very complex depending on your systems, to finding the right research and content to serve your clients better. So for us, it's about ensuring that our colleagues have the right tools, that we automate the right processes, but they are in the center. They are the SMEs, and they need to go on this journey with us, right? They need to go on the journey with us, making their lives different, better, and giving them the right tools to serve our clients and our customers even better. And those overlap, from customer support to, providing surveys, just bringing all of that data together for them to quickly be able to assess a moment and a delivery and an action is powerful. And that's the journey we're on.
Have your customers' expectations of you changed with respect to kind of their level of involvement in co-creation during this time? Or have your expectations of your customers changed?
No, I think co-creation, I was waiting for a point to try to, sneak that in. So thank you, Paul. I do think today co-creation is very, very important. I also think embedding ourselves in our client's environment is important. And that's where the co-creation is even more powerful, is how do we work on your pain points, your issues, your needs, your value together, deepens the relationship with our clients. And so we're doing more and more of those design thinking with our clients, innovating with our clients, and ensuring that we understand their ecosystem, because their ecosystem is inside of the provider, but also external to us. And how do we partner differently right? We partner differently to try to connect value streams to even deliver more value to our clients.
Renee, as we look at the evolving relationship we have with our customers, right, engaging customers in a sense of mission and in a broader purpose is clearly something that some organizations are doing and doing successfully. And I think many organizations aspire to. I wonder if you might kind of share some things you've seen with respect to what works in terms of bringing customers kind of into your broader sense of mission. I've heard that the pandemic described in particular as this shared experience. Well, I think it really isn't. It's billions of concurrent experiences, right? But nevertheless, it is an event we are all going through. And at least in parts of the world, right, confronting anti-racism is an event, we hope a permanent one, that we're all going through. So I'm interested in how organizations are kind of leveraging their sense of mission with their customers.
That's a great question. So I think we're seeing various approaches, some more successful than others, on that topic. I think that this issue of co-creation and collaboration is essential to engendering this feeling of partnership between the and its customers or its team. I've seen, for example, some work being done, for example, with Apple. They do a really good job of, in their Mac forums, getting their customers to actually work for them for free, which I know sounds like an odd thing. To get your customers to work for you sounds like the last possible persuasive strategic approach that you can possibly do. But if you think about it, this is something that's been bubbling up, aided by technology for a very long time. When you're flying, you print out your boarding pass yourself, or you use your phone yourself, right? You curate your own musical list. You don't have to have a DJ do that in entertainment streaming platforms, right? In Apple's case, with their Mac forums, they have customers talk to other customers to solve problems. So someone goes with a hardware problem, for instance, and a customer who does not work for Apple for free solves this problem. Now, why on earth would someone do that? They do that because they derive out of that some benefit that's beyond kind of the traditional benefits that we perceive when we're thinking about a traditional B2C or B2B relationship. And I think that's where, in this moment, we'll see a lot of creativity and we'll see a greater embrace of that. People are willing to do work and to co-create to the extent that they feel that the value they receive is worth it. To organize around that, because you get participation and information in turn.
I want to come back to a separate point you made in your presentation. And that is the risk. These are my words, not yours, so I'm not putting words in your mouth. But I think you identified a risk that technology could actually be gasoline on a fire in a very negative way right now, as well as something that helps solve our problems near and long term. How do we avoid? What do we need to be wary about with respect to to inadvertently, using technology to exacerbate problems, particularly right now?
That is so important. I'm so glad you've raised that. I think the first thing, frankly, is raising that question. Asking this question is an important part of it, not being on autopilot. Autopilot is a bad mode in crisis. And as I talked about with cognitive style, it can lead to automatic and quick thinking, but not necessarily the best decisions when more sort of deliberative thinking is necessary. So I think it's important that these conversations, leadership encourages these conversations, because I guarantee you, your clients and your customers will be asking it at some point, and you'd better have a good answer. You'd better be able to demonstrate that you've been thinking about this and you've been acting on it. I don't think that that's one of the genie aspects that will go back in the bottle. I think people now have awakened to the role that technology can play. Having said that, I think there's tremendous opportunity. There's tremendous opportunity to democratize data, for instance. Right now, clients feel like their data is a bit of a black box, and they don't feel like they have much control over that data either. that's not a very good sentiment to have in a customer experience. So to the extent that you can be more transparent with those data, I think people will be more forthcoming with it, right? They'll be more likely to trust you because they have a sense of what you're doing with it. And so I think that's an important frontier strategy that we should consider. Additionally, the makeup of our executive teams, I'm going to bang the drum on this, is important because you don't know what you don't know. And so to the extent that we can get representation who understands the various customers in the setting, it will be very important to ensure that guiding principles include things like customer welfare and empowerment.
Thank you. So, Gail and Akash, we have a minute or so left, and I want to offer you each the chance for some brief, I'm afraid, closing comments, either about kind of how we make sure we don't lose the best of what we've gained and learned over the past few months, or really anything else that you'd like to leave us with. So, Gail, you first, please.
I think for me, it's continuous learning. If I leave you with anything, it's to continue to learn more about your clients and more about your colleagues, to drive value, not from necessarily the company's perspective, but value as it is seen by your clients, and make sure they meet. So that continuous learning, that continual pulse that we need, that the technology allows us to enact, we must take advantage of it, and we must serve our clients better.
Thank you. And Akash.
And I'll add to that with two other things. One, this pandemic has taught us something different about change. Change in an organization in an accelerated manner. It also taught us how adaptable we all can be during a crisis event like this. I think technology has a role to play. We need to make sure that we are focused on our customers, whether it be internal or external, or the partner network that companies have, and make sure that we are understanding their ecosystems, making sure that we are understanding what they are going through, and put technology and the solutions by keeping the change and adaptability in mind during this time.
Thank you very much. And that was just a terrific conversation. So Renee, Gail, Akash, thank you for your time and for sharing your wisdom and your experience. And Alan, I think I am turning the baton back to you.
Indeed. And I will also say thank you to Paul, Akash, Gail, and Renee. That was a really great panel. And a special thanks to you, Paul, for moderating and also helping us plan this panel. I appreciate the work that you did ahead of time. And Renee, also a special thanks to you for doing that presentation on short notice, which, by the way, will be posted this afternoon on our website for all the audience. So that was really great. And I also want to thank all of the members of the audience for attending this. I really appreciate the support that we've gotten for this program. Please be sure to find us on social media. You can find us on facebook.com/MIT CIO. You can find us on Twitter @MIT CIO. You can also visit our company page on LinkedIn, which is the MIT Sloan CIO Symposium. Or you can go to YouTube and find our YouTube channel where this video will be posted, and that is the MIT Sloan CIO Symposium videos. Finally, I invite you to join us for episode number 4 on September 9. That's going to be focused on building the post-pandemic enterprise. We're going to have Naomi Ida from CIO Dive moderate the first panel. And then we have James Manika and Rodney Zimmel, both from McKinsey, who's going to do a short presentation as well as moderate the second panel. And finally, I ask, please fill out our survey. We are interested in your feedback on the digital learning series. And that's all for now.
Bye.